people are asking, so there are 3 questions about reheating stuff and nutrients. Okay, so the first thing is, a year ago, I did so I had heard this stuff, right? Like people like Ayurvedic doctors will say, like, don't use microwaves. And so I was like, okay, is there any data behind this? St. John's wort you have to be careful about for sure, especially because you can get serotonin overdoses if you're taking regular antidepressants as well. I don't recommend really medical marijuana in most cases. Yeah, you're thamsic if you take benzos. That's right. So let's just talk about reheating food for a second, okay? No, serotonin overdose doesn't lead to burnout. You're gonna fucking start shaking and like I don't think you can have seizures, but it can be really bad. Like you're gonna have an elevated heart rate. You're gonna have fucked up reflexes. It's like really bad. So we're gonna just talk for a second about the reheating food, okay? So a lot of these like alternative medicine folks talk about like eating freshly cooked food and stuff like that. Like I personally think that has validity. That's anecdotal. So about a year ago, I sat down and I tried to like understand like what studies have been done about nutrients in food. And the best that I could find is like most of the studies about nutrients and reheated food actually come from like the 1970s when microwaves started to become popular. So when microwaves became popular, there were a bunch of studies that were done on like the nutrient impact of microwaves and reheating food on nutrients. The short answer is that these studies basically found a minimal amount of difference between microwaved food and like a reheated food and other things. The problem is that they really only looked at like macronutrient components. So they looked at like grams of carbohydrate. So what they did is they took like, let's say like a lasagna, and they like measured the amount of grams of carbohydrate, grams of fat, grams of protein in a lasagna. And then they microwaved it, and then they measured the grams of carbohydrate, the grams of protein, and the grams of fat, and they basically found there's very little difference. So from a macronutrient perspective, the raw number of like the grams of protein and stuff are relatively the same. The problem is that it doesn't look at any of like the more subtle things that we've learned to detect, right? So it doesn't look at what the inflammatory state of that lasagna is. It doesn't look at micronutrients, doesn't really look at vitamins and minerals and things like that. Like vitamin C has a half-life of something like 12 hours. So like, you know, a lot of vitamins have a very low half-life. And the other really interesting thing is that if you pick up a piece of fruit, it's cold. Like a piece of fruit at room temperature is going to feel colder than the surrounding objects. And the question is why? It's because the fruit is actually still alive, right? Like, do you guys get that when you have a fruit and a vegetable, those are still like living organisms? Like you can take the bottom of like a head of lettuce, you can stick it in water and it's going to start to grow. Like if you have a potato that's sitting in your closet or in your pantry, that potato is going to start sprouting. So you have active metabolism going on in like fruits and vegetables. And so the nutritional capacity of like an orange that's sitting on your shelf is like 100% because that vitamin C has not started to decay because the thing is actually alive. Whereas if you have like a bottle of orange juice, they fortify it with vitamin C, but then that vitamin C is going to start decaying because there's nothing alive in there. So I think that the data actually doesn't do a great job at supporting the view that I'm propagating, which is that, you know, healthy food, I mean, that reheating food negatively impacts it. But like if we just stop and think about our human experience of eating reheated versus freshly cooked food, it tastes wildly different. So what I wonder is like, what is it that your taste buds and your senses are picking up? Right? So there's got to be something that they're picking up. And if you think about like, you know, when you eat like a piece of really old food and then you get an upset stomach, like why do you get an upset stomach? Like that's not mental. And something in your taste buds is warning you before you even get the indigestion that it's like, hey man, like maybe you shouldn't really be eating this. Like if you eat like freshly cooked baby back ribs, that shit is delicious and you're like, I want to eat more, I want to eat more, I want to eat more. Whereas if you have like baby back ribs that have been like sitting out on the countertop for like 4 days and you start to eat it, your body is not going to tell you, I want more, I want more, I want more, right? It's going to be like, this is kind of nasty and like maybe you shouldn't eat this. So your body is able to pick up a lot of signals that we don't even scientifically understand. And it's my opinion that those signals correlate with like nutritiousness of food. Which is why things like cooked vegetables taste better, because they have more available nutrients. So my sense is that we're picking up on all kinds of different like changes in the nutrient density, the nutrient quality, which cause us to enjoy cooked foods less. So I do think that that reheated food has less nutritional value than freshly cooked food. And I think that nutrient value isn't simply in terms of like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and isn't necessarily just in terms of vitamins as well. There's something about, I don't know how it works, but like there's something about it that just makes it taste good. And so I think, I'm a big fan of like Meal Prep Sunday, because like I think it allows you to make healthy food choices throughout the week. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't do Meal Prep Sunday, because like if you have a choice between eating like meatballs and French fries and doing Meal Prep Sunday and like making yourself like 3 days of stir fry, I think you should go with the stir fry. At the same time, you should try to eat as much freshly cooked food as you can, and like try to portion things, and then try to use things like slow cookers and stuff like that. And like there are a lot of really quick things that you can make. Like you can take a piece of fish, sprinkle it with salt, pepper, seasoning, breadcrumbs, pat it down, heat up some olive oil in a pan, and you can be start to finish within 25 minutes. You can have like prepared, like prepped the fish, cooked the fish, eaten the fish, and washed a pot. Right? Like you can do that. So people are asking like, what's the balance between meal prep and eating fresh food? I'd say like do what you can. So if your choice is between eating like unhealthy food, like burgers every day, right? Like a freshly cooked burger, I don't think is as good as like on a daily basis as like a stir fry meal prep. But I'd say that if you're really like, and you just have to figure out what your own personal threshold is, and what you like, what you want to prioritize. Like how much of your time is it worth sacrificing to eat freshly cooked food? So in my case, like I try to eat something fresh at least every day, like usually like twice a day. And it's not that hard. I think if you guys have roommates and stuff, it becomes way easier. Even if you have coworkers. Like I used to do this thing with my med school classmates, where like there were some days where like one of us would cook for everyone. So like I would wake up and I would like make food for like 4 of us. And then like we'd all have lunch together, and I like have freshly cooked food like that day, and then like the next day someone else brings something. It doesn't have to be super like fancy. Like sometimes it's just sandwiches and stuff. So I think you should just find your own personal balance with what you have. Like I think it helps if you're like, I'm married and I have 2 kids and my mom lives with us, so like there are 3 adults that can cook freshly cooked food every day. We're really careful about feeding my kids freshly cooked food, so we try to like really give them fresh food every day. Yeah. So someone's asking like, what if you don't like someone else's cooking? Well, I mean, so I think you should learn how to do things that you don't like, right? So like, why don't you like it, and like, what's the reason for that? I mean, you guys are like, you're assuming that if you don't like, your actions are dictated by what you like and what you don't like. Well, that's a shitty way to go through life, my friend. If your actions are dictated by your intentions as opposed to what you like or dislike, then you're going to be in a far different place. If you like reheated food, I'm not sure. So I think there are some foods that improve with being like old, right? Not old, but like, so for example, I think if you cook a soup, a lot of the flavors will like blend like hours after the soup is cooked. And the second day they kind of reheat better and things like that. There are definitely cases of that. I think that I'm not sure why your taste buds would prefer that. Yeah. So the other thing is, the other reason why you may like reheated food is because your taste buds have just grown accustomed to it, right? So like if you grow up eating something, like I've had some people, like I hear about some people who like eat steak that's like well done and cooked like shoe leather, and that's just the way they grew up eating it, so that's how they like it, and so that could have something to do with it. I mean, if you just eat a lot of reheated food, then that's just how it is. Um. Okay. Something that helped me eat healthier was prepping all my meals. Would you say it's worth the effort to try and cook more fresh foods? I worry I struggle to eat as healthy as I am now if I were to cook. Yeah, so I think prep is great, right? So I think it's like a good idea to like prep whatever you can ahead of time. But you can cook whole meals or you can prep stuff. And this is where, like for example, what I was telling Gizmo today is like when you wake up in the morning while you're making a cup of tea or you're making your cup of coffee, like literally, so this is literally just grab a bell pepper, wash it, and slice it up. The process of grabbing a bell pepper, washing it, and slicing it into like 9 pieces is like 60 seconds. I think a lot of people grossly misunderestimate or grossly overestimate how long it actually takes to cook food and prepare food. Like grabbing a piece of fruit, washing it, and slicing it is like a 60-second endeavor. You can spend 5 minutes prepping stuff and you will be amazed. Like you grab a piece of fish, wash it, pat it down, sprinkle salt, take 3 or 4 things of seasoning, sprinkle it on there, and then you're done. That whole process is like 90 seconds. Yeah, so I think this is also where there's this beautiful thing called YouTube. And on YouTube, sometimes there are people on there, it's fucking weird. They're just like people who have like cooking experience and they just show you how to like prep things. And they show you how to like slice. And it's like really easy. Like if you're I don't know how to describe this, but if you're having trouble with the seeds in a bell pepper, you need to like, if this is the bell pepper, you need to cut down from the top, right? So you make 4 slices, you pull off the top, and that's all the seeds. And then you're done. Like, there's no bother with the seeds. The other thing, if you have trouble with seeds in a bell pepper, is you wash it after you cut it. All the seeds just come out. You're done. Easy.